Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Tejano Virtual Events. This session is going to be on La Nube, which is our new El Paso Children's Museum. So I'm really excited to hear all this new information. Before I hand it over to our presenters, I do want to mention a couple of things. This session will be recorded, so we can come back to it later, and I will try to post the link to the TV videos if you like in the chat. Also, this event will provide Tejano passport points that goes to acquiring a Tejano medallion. The code I will also post in the chat, and it'll be towards the end of the session. So now at this time, please mute your mics for the best sound experience. Otherwise, the feedback could interfere with the information we will be sharing today. So without further ado, here is our presenter, Stephanie Otero for La Nube. Thank you.
Good afternoon, EPCC. I'm so excited to be here today to share with you this incredible project, La Nube. I'm going to give you a little history of the project to start, and then we're going to take you on a virtual tour through the museum. So in 2012, there was a quality of life bond that passed in the city of El Paso. And some of you were probably too young to vote at that time, but 76% of El Pasoans said yes to this quality of life bond. And it included multiple items, some large, some small, to help improve the quality of life across our region. There were 3 signature projects that were part of that quality of life bond. One was for a children's museum. We're going to fast forward from 2012 to 2016, and none of the quality of life bond projects had started yet. And a few stakeholders came to the El Paso Community Foundation. I actually work for the El Paso Community Foundation in addition to serving as the CEO of La Nube currently. But they came to the foundation and they said, we think the Children's Museum is one of the most important projects in that quality of life bond, because not only is it going to have a major impact on our educational ecosystem, but it's also going to matter for our economic development. There was a study done that when businesses look to either place headquarters in cities, or if they're looking to expand into cities, they look for certain quality of life items that will ensure that their employees will have a wonderful life in the new city that they're living in. And a children's museum or science center is part of that. And so in 2016, the foundation said, yes, we want to make this happen. And so we actually spearheaded 3 things. The first thing we did was a series of public meetings. In fact, we did 32 public meetings to hear from the community. We wanted to make sure that this facility, La Nube, was built by the community for the community. And over the course of 6 months, we did all of these public meetings. And what came out of it was the idea of blue sky thinking. That was going to be our theme. And so literally, of course, you all know we live in a city that is 300 plus days of blue skies. But in the scientific world, blue sky thinking is thinking outside the box, thinking of what's not thought of before, being innovative. And we want to make sure that visitors that come to La Nube are incredibly innovative, want to think outside the box, and want to take technology, science, engineering, math to the next levels. The next thing that we did was host an architecture contest. And I don't know if any of you got to vote, but we did take this out to the community. And after looking at 25 different architects, we selected Snøhetta. Now, Snøhetta is home base is in Oslo, Norway. And I often get asked, Oslo, Norway, why Oslo, Norway? Well, one of the founding principal architects of Snøhetta is Elaine Molinar, who was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, graduated from Coronado High School. She attended UT Architectural School. And a few years after graduating, she and a couple of her friends from UT entered what's called a blind architecture contest. And what that means is they didn't have to submit their resumes. They just got to submit the design. So they didn't know that they didn't have a lot of experience. Well, they won. And that huge project was actually the redo of the Library of Alexandria. This is Elaine's first project back here in El Paso. Her parents live here, aunts and uncles, cousins. She is so excited to actually bring a project to her home community. It's important to the El Paso Community Foundation that we also spend dollars locally. So we asked our selected architect to partner with a local architect of record, which is Exigo, to make sure that we are bringing dollars into the economy of our own community. So this incredible building was designed by Snøhetta, but then they had to turn to a large engineering firm because this is a very complex building. It's a 77,000 square foot building that sits on a 24,000 square foot lot that is surrounded by UP Railroad, the trolley line, the art museum, the Plaza Theater, the Mills Garage. It was a very complicated site. So we turned to Arab engineering to design our beautiful building. And so what you were looking at was a rendering, and now you're looking at what it looks today as we're almost finished with construction. The building has an incredible steel structure that is at the base of it. And so for my engineering students or engineering almost students, it's 651 tons of steel. And as I mentioned, it's a very small site and it's very complicated because we could only put the crane on one side of the building. And so instead of building the building from the ground up, we actually had to start on the north side, build all 4 floors, move forward, build up 4 floors, move forward, and back ourselves off of the property. It was a very complex piece, and it was an immense amount of steel compared to what typical buildings have. The other thing that's very interesting is that we wanted, because of the constrained lot size, we wanted to make sure that we had as much exhibit space as we can. And so the engineers, along with the architects, designed the building to have a core wall that runs through the center of it. And it handles all the MEP. And what I mean by MEP, because that was a new word to me for the non-engineering students, that's all our plumbing, our bathrooms, the emergency stairs, anything that is non-exhibit space is in this slender core wall. The other thing they did is that the land that we built on was not level. And instead of leveling that land, we kept it the way it was, and the back half of the building has an extra floor. And that extra floor is actually divided in halves because we have large ceilings, and half of it is a half basement for storage and workshop, and the other half is super cleverly our administrative offices. So our administrative offices are on the 3.5 floor, which I jokingly refer to as our Harry Potter floor. There's a lot of cool structural elements, including doubly curved beams, which neither the engineers nor the fabricators of the steel had ever done before. So they actually had to manipulate the beams twice so that you get this beautiful round building that you see that we showed you just earlier. We also have some incredible curved stairs that float through the building. These are huge, long span curved signature stairs. It's sort of a signature of Snøhetta that the visitors will traverse. Obviously, we will have 2 elevators in addition to make sure that we are completely accessible, but they're very magnificent and cool, and just they float through the building. The other thing that was kind of interesting that I thought I would share before we get to the beautiful pictures of the exhibits is that in a typical office building, people walk around, right? But in a children's museum science center, we're going to have kids jumping up and down, running, moving through. And so they really had to think about what's called the footfall. And that's where they accommodate for the waves and the way that the building might move as other people are moving. And so our engineers actually, what you're looking at, simulated a quinceañera in order to work on what the footfall needed to be for our building. We have an amazing set of exhibits in this building. When Snowhetta designed the building, they designed it to look like a cloud due to our blue sky thinking. And then we brought on Gyroscope as our exhibit designers. They're located in Oakland, California. The exhibits span through 4 stories. On the first floor, we're going to have some unticketed areas, a gift shop, an indoor-outdoor cafe. We will also have an unticketed garden area that you're seeing on the right side that will have misting poles and boulders to climb on and fun things, and all that will be for anyone in the community to enjoy. We will also have something what we call the Blue Sky Lab, which will be a space for classrooms to come in during the week for field trips and do scientific experiments and then enjoy La Nube, as well as on weekends we'll of course have fun things like birthday parties. We'll also have after graduation parties and after prom parties and corporate events and team building events. So we're excited to have the entire community enjoy the building. Most of the exhibits though start on the 2nd floor. There are 9 themed zones in our in La Nube, and the zones came out of all those public conversations we had in the community. Our first zone is the Anything's Possible Climber. It is a 50-foot 4-story climber that builds up through the atrium. On the left, you see the steel structure that had to be put in place in the atrium to bring the climber to life. And on the right, you actually see what the climber looks like. Oftentimes when you go into children's museums and science centers, you see a lot of science, technology, and engineering, not as much math. And so we asked our exhibit designers to be very thoughtful about math in our building. Math is one of those subjects that some kids just at a very early age decide they don't like it. I hate math. I'm not good at math. I'll never be good at math. And we want to encourage kids to love math. And so our entire climber is based on geometric figures so that they can play around with geometry while they're climbing through the structure. And we have this wonderful video that will take you and ascend you up through the climber to show you all the wonderful opportunities as you climb. It is built so that both kids and adults can experience the climber. We'll also have a parallel universe that it will allow caregivers to traverse through the climber if they don't feel comfortable climbing. And so that they can either check on their kiddos or probably more importantly, tell their kiddos it's time to come down. There's going to be a rock wall that they can program and traverse. There's going to be a rope bridge that hangs at the 50-foot point. But at the very tippy top of the climber, we have something called In the Clouds. And it's really important to La Nube that we are a beacon of inclusion and access. And children who spend their lives in wheelchairs oftentimes don't get into a fantastic climber like this, and they certainly don't get to experience the tippy top of that climber. And so we have at the very top of the climber a wheelchair obstacle course that children in wheelchairs will have the ability to float in the clouds at the very top of the climber, but we'll also provide wheelchairs so that we're able to build empathy for those children that don't live their lives in wheelchairs as they attempt to move through our wheelchair obstacle course. As I just mentioned, we are very much interested in inclusion and access, and not just about mobility access, all types of access. So we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable and feels welcome in La Nube. To our knowledge, we will have the first non-hierarchical bilingual museum. And what I mean by this is oftentimes when you go into museums and you see signage, you'll see the English on the top and the Spanish on the bottom. That can send a message. And so for us, sometimes the Spanish will be on top, sometimes on the bottom, sometimes left, sometimes right. We really want people to flow through the museum and it feel bilingual. The other thing we did is the scientific terms and the careers that we are showcasing in La Nube will be bolded, so we embrace bilingual education. We will have many opportunities to support families who have children with sensory sensitivities. So we will have sensory timeout areas throughout the museum. For example, we'll have these cocoons where you can get inside and envelop yourself and cancel out the noise to just take a break. We'll have sensory backpacks that children and families can check out that'll have noise canceling headphones and special glasses that dim lights and weighted vests and other things that support them. And we'll also have a turn down map. And by that, I mean, typically museums, when they started to be more sensitive to children with sensory sensitivities, they said, okay, the first Tuesday of the month is turn down night. Except that if only one day a month is turned down, that's not very inclusive because they can only come that one night. And what if you have another something to do with your family? So we're going to have a turn down map, and it'll be that different zones will be turned down at different times of the day so that families can traverse the museum on their own that works for them. Finally, we will make sure that we have access programs so that families that maybe can't afford the ticket prices or the membership have access. And we don't want it just to have one free day a year. We're going to have a program that allows all families in El Paso to access La Nube as much as they would like to. We're now going to move into the next zone, and this is Big Skies. This area really came out of conversations with K-12 science teachers. The whole area is about dramatic weather and sustainable living, renewable energies, and in El Paso, we don't really have dramatic weather. I mean, unless you count the wind, we don't have tornadoes and hurricanes and typhoons. And so kiddos don't have firsthand experience seeing how weather affects a city and how you can use different weather to harness energy for your community. Within each zone, there are a multitude of experiences. I could spend 8 hours talking to you all about them. We've selected a few to highlight for you for this presentation. So within Big Skies, one of the things you can do is join our research vessel. Children love to role play, and so they're going to become sea captains, and they're going to take their boat out to sea, and there'll be cool screens at the front that'll show like glaciers or icebergs. There'll be radars and compass. There'll even be a boom that they can lower over the side of the balcony and really understand how much scientific data is collected on the sea. We'll also have a weather forecasting station. So we're going to teach kiddos the science behind predicting the weather, but then they get to become the weather forecasters in the front of this blue screen. And I always joke that I think people become weather forecasters because they want to stand out in the hurricanes with their hair blowing in the wind and show that they're the last man standing. So what we'll have is we'll actually have fans so that they can blow their hair, but then the blue screen will superimpose the scene from where they're forecasting the weather and add clothing and other things to make their video look real. And the cool thing is that every visitor that comes into La Nube will have the opportunity to get an RFID bracelet. And what this will allow them to do is as they create videos or they design a car or they take a selfie coming down the slide, they can tap their wristband and it'll save all of those selfies, videos, and designs. And then when they get home, they're going to get an email that says, "Thank you for visiting La Nube today. Here are all the fun things that you did." Also in Big Skies, we have our sustainable city. And this is where youth are going to become architects and engineers, and they're going to design their city. And then they're going to test their city against the weather. So for example, we're going to have a shake table, and it actually has a to-scale map of El Paso with our fault line. We actually had an earthquake a couple months ago, and they'll design their buildings, and then they'll test it against the earthquake. Or they can learn to harness the weather to help create electricity for their building. So you see an arch in the center of this picture that is going to simulate the sun going across the sky. So a challenge for our visitors could be if you add solar panels to your building, if your building is lit at 10 a.m., will it still be lit at 2 p.m.? The next zone we're now moving into the third floor, is Fly High. And this really is a nod to our aerospace industry. On the first slide of each photo of each zone, you're getting to actually see in real time where the construction, and then we're showing the renderings of the completed zone. On the left, you see a giant rocket ship. You're going to get to go to other planets there. So you'll go in there, you'll jump, and then the video replay will show you how high and how fast you jumped based on the properties of the planet you choose. We at La Nube are going to be all about STEAM. So not just science, technology, engineering, and math, but we're going to add the arts in. We believe the arts are so important to scientific innovation because it helps build out creativity and collaboration. So just next to the rocket ship, you see some sort of crazy abstract balloon-looking things. This is a really cool thing that we actually took an idea from artists in New York City. So in New York City, where the subways go past, there's grates on the sidewalks that air pops up. And so some artists take cloths and they make sculptures. And when the subway train goes by, those sculptures come to life. And so what we're going to do here, we're opening with sort of these fantastical images that our exhibit designers Gyroscope came up with, but then we'll have classes to teach visitors how to make those sculptures and also work with local artists, so we change out that display. But in the center of Fly High is airspace, and this is the most high-tech, state-of-the-art paper airplane launching facility. It was important to us that when visitors went home after being in such a high-tech place, that there were things that they could share with their families. Most people can find a piece of paper. So what you're going to do when you come here is design the coolest paper airplane that you've ever designed. One of the other educational philosophies that's important to us is the idea that scientific innovation doesn't happen on the first try. If you're going to be a scientist or an engineer, you need to embrace failure. You need to embrace risk-taking and perseverance and iteration and refinement. So you at one side will have a launch for your paper airplane. It'll actually air launch it. And your goal will be to get through the obstacles over the Franklin Mountains to the star on the mountain. In addition to the obstacles, we will also have fans that will create updrifts and downdrifts, because as we all know, when you are flying in and out of El Paso, we have a lot of turbulence, and that is because of the updrifts and the downdrifts. But we also are going to have video replays with data. So the kids that after they fly their airplanes, they'll have and I shouldn't say kids because everything's built, whether you're 1 or 99, we want everyone to come and enjoy this place. It'll say, now make refinements to your airplane. It'll even give you hints, change your launch angle, change the wind speed, but it'll give the visitor data that they can then analyze and improve their paper airplane. We also will have a wind wall, and this is going to be made up of small circular metallic discs, and air is invisible. And so the idea for someone to understand that as we move through space, we displace air can be difficult. And so we want visitors to engage with our wind wall. So we'll have air cannons and propellers and things that show the time delay between where air moves and it attaches to the wall. Kiddos will even be able to see as they walk and the cylinders move that they're displacing air. We're now going over to the other area on the third floor. As I mentioned, the original quality of life bond was for a children's museum, but through all of our public meetings, it was clear that our community wanted a hybrid children's museum science center. And this is actually best practice across the country. My children are in college, and when they were young and we would travel, what was the Austin Children's Museum is now something called the Thinkery, a hybrid children's museum science center. The San Antonio Children's Museum is now called the Dooseum, a hybrid Children's Museum Science Center. And this is happening across our country. But we wanted to make sure that we were careful to address the original quality of life bond. So we have a dedicated early childhood area that I'm going to take you through now. But we also have embedded in all of the other zones early childhood experiences so that families that maybe are traveling with a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 13-year-old all can find something to do. So I'm welcoming you to follow your instincts. In many children's museums, there's role play areas. I mentioned before at our research vessel that kids love to role play. And you typically will see a police station, a fire station, a farmer's market, or a grocery store. Well, every inch of La Nube is custom designed and built just for El Paso. While there are scientific concepts that you can find in other science museums, our exhibits are unique and you can't find them anywhere else, including our role play area where we went in a different direction. Ours is all about animals. And so visitors can either become the animals, and we've got puppetry and live theater and shadow play. We've got caverns, a nod to Waco tanks. We have trees. We have the Rio Grande. Kids are going to learn about the habitats of animals, how they move, how they sound, what do they eat. Or they can become the veterinarians who take care of the animals. One of the other things that came out in all of our public meetings with the community is that they not only wanted us to inspire kids to think about science and technology and engineering and arts and math, but we wanted to connect that inspiration to careers. These are the caverns that you can go through and play with phosphorescent geodes. And here is our care lab. So when you become the veterinary, you will have an MRI machine, you'll have a microscope, you'll have an X-ray machine, an operating table. But the cool part is we're going to have special stuffed animals that will have chips in them. And the chip allows us so that if a child is taking care of a fox and they put the fox in the X-ray machine, the image on the X-ray machine will be of a real fox. Or if they're in the care stations, the oxygen, heartbeat will be of a real fox. Of course, visitors can bring their own stuffies to take care of in our care lab, but we'll have these nice high-tech stuffed animals as well. Right adjacent to Follow Your Instincts is Desert Bloom. And you'll see in this picture a mural on the wall. Throughout the museum, we have 6 local artists that did art installations. This one is by Kristen Apodaca. We also worked with Gabriel Marquez, Margarita Cabrera, Mitsu Overstreet, and then we worked with 2 wonderful organizations, Creative Kids and Beautiful Minds, to put beautiful art throughout our museum. Desert Bloom is a nod to the Chihuahuan Desert. When we did all the public meetings, we did hear 2 pieces of discourse that I always share. And the first one was, there was a whole group of people in our community that said, we want La Nube to look like El Paso, feel like El Paso. But then we had an equally strong group that said, no, we want it to be global because so many families in our community don't have the means to travel. We want to make sure that they can see things from around the world. And instead of asking Gyroscope to choose one group or the other, we asked them to marry them. So in Fly High, you get to go to another planet. But here in Desert Bloom, you get to enjoy and celebrate our beautiful Chihuahuan Desert. This will be the only area that will have an age restriction. This will be birth to 3 and shoes off. And of course, they're caregivers. In the center, you see a huge barrel cactus. This will be a program area. We will be offering programs every day. And what we've shared is once you enter the museum, there will be no upcharges. The programs and all the extras will all be included. You also see on the left-hand side are tactile trails. Kids at this age are learning to walk, and we want to encourage those gross motor skills. So you see wonderful little animal tracks that encourage kiddos to go up a slight ramp, to walk around different rocks. We also have a slight undulating surface, and then there'll be a ball system where they can have fun rolling balls down. But the cool part is all along those tactile trails and on the outside of the barrel cactus is all kinds of sensory activities and early childhood activities that were developed in partnership with the Paso del Norte Development Center here in El Paso. Their therapists work with us to make sure that we had all the most wonderful early childhood experiences we could have, including, to our knowledge, the first ever ling sound experience. Children have to develop 6 sounds when they're babies that help ensure that they have proper speech development. And those 6 sounds are the same whether kids are going to start in English or Spanish. We have a large percentage of children that develop speech delays in our community, and so we wanted to make sure we supported that by having a ling sound experience. We also will have our wobbly web, and this looks a little bit like a trampoline, but it doesn't give so much. And this is really about building coordination and balance for our littlest visitors. There'll also be fun mirrors and things that they can play with while they're in the wobbly web. And then we'll have an area for our 12-month and under. This will both be a program area, but also you see those kind of cool cocoons. And I have to tell you, the renderings are pretty close to what you're going to see in the museum, except these cocoons. They in real life are far more spectacular. The woodwork on them is incredible. But what's cool is caregivers and their littles can cozy up in there, and we've partnered with local musicians, authors, and personalities, and families, caregivers, children can go in there and enjoy stories or music or lullabies and just enjoy a nice time together. And finally, in Desert Bloom, we have a sandbox. And this is sort of beginning to teach topography. It's going to have lights and sounds, and children can either get in the sandbox and play, or for children that don't feel comfortable with their feet in the sand, we'll have sand trays for them to engage with. We're now going to move up to our 4th floor, and this is Making Waves. And what you're seeing on the screen right now, it's enormous in real life. It is our sun marimba, which I'll talk about in just a second. Making Waves is all about music and sound waves. I want to point out in the foreground those cocoons. I mentioned about the sensory timeouts. Those are what it's going to look like. But in Making Waves will be a series of pods and experiences to engage with music. So you see straight ahead our big giant sun marimba. This is actually a real marimba that's been deconstructed into the shape of a sun, and underneath it is a coded table. And on that coded table, you'll be able to start to teach coding with our visitors, but they're also going to become composers. So the coding will actually code the marimba to play their composition. Visitors will also be able to play with echoes. They'll also be able to play, there's a closer up picture of the marimba. They'll also be able to play with found objects and hear different sounds, and drums. They'll be able to actually hear their heartbeat played by a drum. But also in this area, we'll have a bass bed, and this is for children that have hearing loss. They'll actually be able to lay down and then manipulate the sounds and feel the sound waves on their back. Finally, in Making Waves, we have a program area that will have some different experiences, but this entire area can be turned into a sound studio. So any of you out there, budding musicians who want to be the next Khalid or the next U2, you can come here and use our facility to create a music video or just your music. We're going to be offering after hours for teens, for college students, and we'll even have adult nights with adult beverages and adult food. But also we want to look at this as a place that students, high school students, can come and work on college digital portfolios. That's something new in the college enrollment process, and we want to make sure that our students in El Paso have the best advantages of any youth across the United States. We have 2 more zones in our incredible whirlwind tour of La Nube. We're now landing in Challenge It, and what you're seeing on the screen is a giant LED cube. Challenge It is going to be sort of a makerspace on steroids, if you've heard the term makerspace. And we took the idea of Challenge It and we played with it. Code it, float it, roll it, make it, edit it. And it really is a space about open-ended questions, ambiguity. Ambiguity is hard. Ambiguity is hard for kids. It's hard for adults. And open-ended questions and thinking of what's not thought before is difficult. And so we wanted a space that will really challenge visitors to think like that. So we will have what I would call a more traditional makerspace with 3D printers and things for different scientific and technology and engineering challenges. We have a space that we're going to be able to bring field trips in, as well as do workshops with high school students, college students, and adults. We're going to have a really cool thing called Roll It, where visitors can design cars and then they're going to race their cars. And just like Airspace and Fly High, where visitors are going to get data so that they can refine their design to improve it, same here. After they race their cars down, they'll get data back so they can refine those cars. We have on the backs of all the benches early childhood maker spaces, and then along the big wall on the right side we have Connect It, and this is all going to be about circuits, but this is going to be done a little bit differently. Instead of the entire wall being completed when we open La Nube, only a small section of it will be done. And then what we're going to do is, as visitors come to La Nube, they're going to engage with this wall, and as a community, we're going to build out our own community art piece. Finally, Flow. This is our water exhibit. I told you earlier in the presentation that we had 2 pieces of discourse when we did all the community meetings. This was the other space. We heard loud and clear from our community that we live in a desert. Water is a precious commodity, and we really work hard to promote conservation in our community. So our exhibit designers went back to the drawing board and made 2 critical changes. First, we will be the only science museum with its own water recycling plant. Now, I don't know if you all knew, I've learned recently, we actually have, through EP Water, a very famous desalination plant. Communities from across the United States come to El Paso to learn from EP Water about the recycling process. So we patterned the recycling plant in Flow after that desalination plant down to the colors of the pipes. So we have blue, green, purple, clean water, wastewater, reclaimed water. So we're really matching the message of conservation in our community. As you enter Flow, you go down a cool bench that was created by Mitsui Overstreet. We also have these washing machines that are actually not real washing machines. I'm sure you're not surprised. But in addition to the local artists that we partnered with within the museum, we also wanted to partner with youth artists. And so in several places in the museum, we did a call for elementary, middle, and high school students to submit art. And so in those washing machines will be displayed art, photographs, and videos of how youth engage with water in our community. The other thing that Gyroscope, our designers, did is they took the science behind how we engage with water every day and they blew it up. So we all take showers, or at least I hope we all take showers. We wash dishes, we wash clothes, we use the restroom, we take things down the drain, put things down a drain. And so we have a giant siphon, we have a giant washing dishwasher that you can walk into. We have a giant toilet bowl with the U-bend to explain that science so that kids understand how water is used. We also have an area that talks about damming. You know, kiddos see that the Rio Grande is dry most of the year. Why? How do we move water through? We have duck races to support our friends up the street in New Mexico. You see in the foreground some little blue seats. Little kids love to play in water, but parents are nervous about things like drowning. So you will have the ability to sit in those little chairs and play with spigots and faucets. We have an Archimedes screw that shows you how water goes up. We even have a little sort of humor. What was on the property before us was a Greyhound bus washing station. And so you can even wash a bus in our flow area. And then we have our outdoor fourth floor terrace. There are two terraces in our 77,000 square foot building. Our second floor terrace will be available for events. We're going to have bubble making and things. On our fourth floor terrace, we're going to have a fantastical water garden. I mentioned to you that we are going to have the water recycling plant. You'll see at the very end of the white wall sort of water droplets. Although we cannot let the children into the water recycling plant because the chemicals are dangerous, we are going to have windows so that visitors can see we are really recycling the water. But in our fantastical water garden, we're going to take those colors, blue, green, and purple, and use pool noodles and create fantastical water plants or abstract art, and to be able to put water systems in them and bring them to life. And then also out on the porch, we'll have dancing water where you can press buttons and make water jump, or a water table where you can design boats and race your boats. So that is sort of the whirlwind tour of La Nube. And I want to end by answering two big questions that I get asked all the time. So I'm just going to answer them before they're asked. The first is, when is La Nube opening? Well, here's what I can tell you. Construction is complicated. We started during a pandemic, and as many of you know, we had a fire. So we've definitely had some delays, but I can promise you that La Nube will open in 2024. I can also promise you that La Nube will open before the final quarter of 2024 and hopefully sooner. The second thing is, how do I get involved? Can I work at La Nube? So if you are interested in working for La Nube, please visit la-nube.org. In April, we are going to be posting for about 35 to 40 part-time positions to come in and help facilitate an experience in La Nube. And our hope is that we will work with a lot of high school and college students across the community who want to either have future educational careers or careers in engineering or technology or science, come and engage and be part of what we think will be one of the most impactful projects to come to El Paso in recent decades. So I thank you for listening through my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Does anyone have any questions? If you do, feel free to use the mic, or you can write it in the chat. No questions?
Well, thank you all. I hope that when the doors open, each and every one of you will come with your families. Oh, I just got a question. How much will it cost to enter? We're actually still working on that. We will likely announce that toward the end of March, but we will make sure that there's an access program for families who the ticket price might be too high. Thank you, Norma. That makes my day. I'm so super proud of this project, and I can't wait for the community to get to go inside. Thank you, Samantha.
Okay, so since we don't have any more questions, I would like to just thank you, Ms. Otero and Ms. Salazar, for coming and presenting. I'm really excited about it. I didn't know we had all those awesome exhibits, and it looks really fun. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you to our audience for being a wonderful audience, and we hope to see you again. As you can see, we posted the next week's Tejano virtual events, which will be the EPCC publications on March 8th. We hope you come and see us again. If you have any questions regarding the Tejano virtual Tejano points, please let us know. We try to help you.